Direct, and of course I'm still not at Alpaca Direct. We were visiting Boise. My daughter got married over the weekend, and we're doing Facebook Live today, and then we'll be making it our 9-hour drive back home. So we wanted to make sure and spend some time with you before we go on our journey. And if you hear any noise, they're doing a lot of landscaping here, but it does look beautiful. So that's the upside of things. So if you have a hard time hearing us, let us know, and we'll try and make it easier for you to hear us, okay? So the first thing that I wanted to talk about today, of course, we have prizes every week, and last week it was for Makita, and this is by Malabrigo. It's hand-painted yarn, and it was last week's prize. It's number 670 Atomic, and this was won by Lori Tischler. And so we need to get her address, and we can send her this lovely prize. So this week's prize is for a darning needle set, and they're called Chibi, and this is number 339, one of our most popular sets that we have on Alpaca Direct. And I love that it has nice pointed needles, and the eye of the needles are nice and wide, so you can thread the yarn through it, okay? And another thing that I like about these Chibis, and why I own one myself and use it, you can see that it's see-through, so you can see your needles on the inside. Plus you can carry almost an unlimited selection of different darning needles in it, and it has a screw-on cap, so it's not going to fall off in your bag and let your needles fall all over the place. So I love these little things. So if any of you out there do not have these, I would recommend that you get it, and you get it from www.alpacadirect.com, and these are made by Clover, but they're called Chibi sets, and they're absolutely wonderful. So that's today's prize, and the way that you enter to win the prize is you post in comments what you're working on, and maybe let us know where you're from, so that we can learn a little bit about you, and let us know what you're working on, and that way we can look at the projects that you're working on, and we can enjoy them as well, because some of us will get so excited about it that we run right out and buy yarn and make those items. So we just love seeing what you're working on. So anyway, today is mostly a technique video, but last week I forgot to show you this lovely crocheted Mobius cowl, and this is by Church Mouse Yarns. And Church Mouse patterns are quite lovely, and what I love about it is, you know, Mobius cowls, or Mobius, they have a twist in them, and I had never seen one with crocheted before, and so I thought this was so awesome. I love this pattern, and this one I think is made out of Kidsetta, and you could use some different yarns. I wrote down some yarns for you that you could use, and the first one that I thought you might like is Rowan Kid Silkes, which is very similar to that. We carried that on Alpaca Direct. And then the next one was Rowan Fine Lace, and the reason why I like Rowan Fine Lace is 80% Surrey alpaca yarn and 20% superfine merino, and so that yarn is totally lovely. So you can take a look at those on our website. Also, the Whisper lace that I always talk about from Universal Yarn would be an excellent choice for crocheting this project. But this I can't tell you how light and airy it is, but these light projects are really nice, because if it's a little cool at nighttime, they are quite lovely for you to be able to wear.
In the sun a little bit. Yeah, you can go in the sun a little.
But it's pretty cool. I mean, I think that for crochet, it's quite a lovely project, and it might be something different for you to work on. And you know how we like to always work on something different. And so, any of you out there that are working on projects and have something different, you can show your projects, and we'd love to see those too. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure and show that to you, because I'd forgotten all about it. I got off on a tangent and forgot, and so I wanted to make sure and not forget that project today.
Melissa says hi.
Hi, Melissa. Good morning.
And there's a question that says, is that itchy?
You know what? No, it isn't. I have very, very sensitive skin, and I can wear it, and I didn't feel any itch at all. Now, maybe if I had it wrapped tightly around my neck and went running with it, it might itch because, you know, as my skin, the pores opened up from my running or what have you, it might itch. But just like that, the way I felt it just now, it's incredibly soft and it's not itchy. And I know there are times when I think of mohair as being itchy. Boy, I have seen some mohair that is not itchy at all. So I have kind of changed my mind about mohair. I mean, there are some mohairs that I can't wear, but there are a lot of products out there that are just fabulous. So don't discount it altogether just because it's mohair. I would actually, you know, just investigate it and see what you like. And I know that is actually quite nice. It feels good on my skin. So today we're going to be talking about different techniques that we can use to weave in our ends. And I just, you know, did a little research and thought of maybe couple different ideas that you all might not use currently, or some, you know, give you some new things to think about, or more tools in your tool chest, so that when you're working on weaving in those ends, you can say, oh, this will work for that, or, you know, what have you. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get started then, okay? So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is weaving in ends in stockinette stitch. And it's called duplicate stitch. And the reason why they call it duplicate stitch, I wanted to show you. Okay, so my sticky note, I should have brought more scrap paper. Sorry, I'm not at Alpaca Direct, so it's a little hard to have all my supplies here. Let me see if I can draw it through. So when you're knitting, it's like a series of loops that are like that, right? When you're knitting, just loops going along, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you open up the stitches, you see these series of loops, okay? There's a loop, there's a loop, there's a loop, and those are knit stitches, okay? So what we're gonna do, this was a little piece that I had done for you, and it goes right over the knit stitches like that, and you want to keep, and then you go down under, because this is actually a knit stitch on the back there, and you go back up. So I have my needle threaded already, and I just put the yarn underneath the stitch so that it would stay in position, so that I could do this more quickly, because sometimes these little techniques take a little while to do, and I didn't want to run out of time in 20 minutes. So see how I just stuck my working yarn right under there, and then I would follow my loops. So right now I have my yarn in this loop right here, and the next one I'm going to be doing is this one. So I will be going here, and I'm just going to, you do about 4 or 6 of them. And I know this is on the right side of the fabric, but with certain items like washcloths and different things, it doesn't really matter if your ends are woven in on the right side or the wrong side. It still looks pretty darn good, and it's a great technique that is quick and easy to do, okay?
And what's this called again?
This is duplicate stitch. A lot of times in patterns, they will have you do this after the project is finished to create a design on your fabric. But it can also be used to weave in your ends, which is fabulous. And you want to keep that tension about the same tension as the tension that you used when you were knitting. Mind you, this yarn that I'm using is worsted weight, and what I knit with was chunky, so it's not exactly the same. I kind of have to improvise because, like I said, I'm not at the shop, so I have to use what I have available here. But you see how you can go along here. And then sometimes with my begin to knitters, okay, so I've gone, let's go a couple more stitches. So we're going under here. Oops, caught a little yarn. So I'll do a couple more stitches, and then I'll show you a little thing that I like to do with begin to knitters that is pretty fabulous. So this one is, you can readjust your, yeah, that is pretty good. Okay, so say I'm done there, and you know how they tell you to do a W when you're weaving in your ends? Well, I like to at least go in one other direction. So I would take my needle here, and I would go like this, and go up a couple stitches, bring your working yarn, or your end that you're trying to weave in, and then watch how I go underneath this stitch, and then I come back, and I would go up this other side and doing the same thing right up to the edge. Okay, and then when I got through here, I could clip it off, and you want to get that other tail out of there. There you go. And make sure the tension again is about the same. And do you see how it hides? Even on the yellow yarn, it kind of hides itself. So I've gone in 2 different directions. It looks pretty good on the back. And then I would just clip this and just give it a little tiny tug, and it just disappears into the work. So that's how I would do duplicate stitch. Okay, that's one way to weave in your ends.
I'm gonna try to move on this side to see.
Now let's take a look at number 2, weaving in ends using garter stitch. And some people will call these. And here's a little sample that I did. This is what it looks like. You want to do this on the wrong side of your garter. And so on this piece you can't really tell, but it doesn't matter which one. That's just an end from my corner over there that I need to cut shorter. But you can see how it doesn't show a whole lot from the right side. It looks pretty good. And of course I'm using the contrasting yarn so that you can see. And that's what it looks like when it's done. Now let me show you how to do this. And this is weaving in ends on garter stitch. So what you do is you pick this, if it's going up way, you can either call it smiles and frowns or frowns and umbrellas. So it's kind of, see how it's kind of at an angle? So you would thread your yarn and go through one. See here? Come on. Tail, move out of the way. And again, you don't want to pull it too tight. You want the tension to stay, about the same as your work. So you do that, and you keep picking up smile and a frown, smile and a frown. No spaces in between. You would go to the very next one and just move it over. And that is a way to weave in your ends in garter stitch on the wrong side of your work, okay? So there is another umbrella and a smile, or a frown and a smile, whatever you want to call them, and you would just go along like that. And that's how you would do that technique, making sure that it's not too tight. You don't want it to pull too tight, but you see how it's nearly invisible on the other side, even with yellow yarn. So that's a nice little technique to use. Okay, now let's look at the next one. The next one is using Russian join, the Russian join. And a Russian join can only be used on wool fibers, and you can't use it on a single ply per se. It doesn't work as well. You want to use it on a plied yarn, and you want to use it on a yarn that is, if it has more than 3 plies, it's best. The more plies that it has, the better it is. So I've already started this sample. So this might be your old yarn, and then you would make a loop, and then you would, I'll show you how you do it, because I have this side I'm going to do. So I have threaded my other yarn, say it's my new yarn that I'm working with, and threaded it on the needle, okay? And then what I do is I start working these plies. Now when you're doing it, if you pull it too tight, it's hard to see. You want to get in the middle of that actual strand. That's why the plied yarns work the best, okay? And so if you just keep it kind of loose and keep flipping that needle around into the plies, and you want to do quite a bit on this, okay? So do a nice maybe about at least 2 inches, all right? And this is a way, it's not actually a way to weave in your ends, but what it is allowing you to do is to have no ends to weave in. That's why I thought this was important to show. Just because doing the Russian join, a lot of people, advanced knitters, love this little technique because it saves them a lot of time. So then when you get a good amount, then you just pull the needle through, okay? And you want to get that little tail out of there, okay? And then what you would want to do is snug it up tight. Snug it up tight, okay, on both sides. But you don't want it too tight, you would take your needle out and pull it like that. And then you can clip this side, your little end, this little end off. And then you would take this one and pull this one tight and do the same thing to it. So you'd pull that one tight. This one is not wound on as tight. See how that one didn't take very well. So it's better. This is vintage, is an acrylic wool blend, so it didn't stick to itself as well as 100% wool yarn would. And so see how this one came undone a bit? That's why you need to do a good 2.5 inches. So you see this side right here did it great, but this side didn't. So if I had 100% wool that was at least 3 plies, it would stick to itself and do it easier. But since this is an acrylic blend, it doesn't work as well, okay? So that's how you do the Russian join, and then you'd be joined and ready to go. Yeah, you'd be joined and ready to go.
5 minutes.
So, anyway, so that's how you do the Russian join, and that's joining one new skein of yarn to the old skein of yarn. Now, let's talk about how we can weave in ends with cotton and acrylic yarns. Okay, so with cotton and acrylic yarns, let me see if I can help you. With cotton and acrylic, 1 second here, Jim. With cotton and acrylic yarns, this is a wool blend yarn. It's not cotton and acrylic. But with cotton and acrylic, what you can do is you can split the fibers, okay? So we would split the fibers, and I did it. Did you see how I did it from the top of the yarn here? And you can just take your darning needle and pull it apart. That's a quick and easy way to do it, okay? And then you would thread your acrylic or your cotton onto your darning needle, and you would just 1/2 of it. Then you would go 1 stitch away from your work, or should I say a 1/2 stitch away, right through the other loop, okay? And then we're going to tie a knot. And I just did one side over the other and then pull it tight. Now you can cut these, and that's how you would deal with cotton and acrylic to make your ends. You won't even see this. You can cut this very short. You just give that a good tug, because the cotton and acrylic will not break. So then you would have it and you would be ready to go. So that's how you deal with cotton and acrylic, okay? So now let's look at our magic knot. See if I can find it here. Where is the magic knot? 1 second. I'm going to show them one more. I can find the magic knot. 1 second, Jim. It's in here in one of these strands. Here's the magic knot. So what I've done on the magic knot, I'll take this off. When you're doing crochet projects and you need to tie on some new yarn because you've come to your end, you would take the tail, what would be the tail from the other yarn, and you flip it over the top of the new yarn that you're going to be using, and you just tie one little half knot, and you just pull it tight. And then I've already done it on this side. This would be my other tail that I would loop over the top, right? And then what you do is you pull them together. Do you see how that pulls together like that? And then you would clip off your ends, and it will not come apart. And you could use this in knitting and or crochet. And then you would be ready, you would be joined and ready to use your yarn. Your new yarn would be right here on the end. Isn't that cool? That's pretty neat. I like that one. So that's how you do that, and that's called the magic knot. And you can also find it on YouTube if you have any problems with it. I'm going to show you one more quick technique before we run out of time. Okay, so in knitting, I am going to, this one I found on YouTube, and it's how you take you weave in ends as you go, okay? So here I take my new yarn and I knit 1 stitch right here, okay? And then I would insert my needle, grab my 2 tails that I want woven in, bring it around to the front. Oops. What I want to do first is I want to make sure that this working yarn, my working yarn must be in the back to make this work, okay? So I'm going to have that like that, bring this to the front, wrap my working yarn around the working needle, which is my right hand needle, bring my tails back, and then complete the stitch. And then I would knit one more stitch, knit that stitch, insert the yarn again, bring this around to the front, wrap my working yarn. I think I have, one second here, I have a strand of yarn from something. One second. Let me see if I can go back then. I got a little tiny strand from this vintage stuck where it shouldn't be. Okay, so we'll insert the yarn again, and we would grab our tails, bring them around, wrap the working yarn, bring our tails back, and then complete the stitch. And then I would knit another stitch, insert that again, tails in front, working yarn wraps, tails in back, and then bring the stitch. And then knit another stitch, and do that for 6 or 7 stitches. And then you have it, see it, this is what you get in the back. And so your yarn is actually getting woven in as you're knitting. So I thought that was a pretty cool new technique that I hadn't seen before. So maybe you'll like that. So let me just show you one more time, Jim, and then we'll finish that up. So you insert your needles into the stitch, bring those tails that you want to the front, wrap your working yarn, bring the tails to the back, and then complete that knit stitch. And then just knit one regular stitch, and then repeat that process over and over across your row that you're knitting. And once again, that's what it looks like on the back. That's pretty cool. So anyway, so those are a few tricks that I learned this week when I was doing our weaving and ends. And so I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something new. And I hope you all have a great day. I'm going to be driving home, and I will be back at Alpaca Direct next week. And don't forget to post your projects online so you can be entered to win these darning needles, the chibis. They're absolutely fabulous, and you'll love it. And the winner for this week was Lori Tischler, and she won Miss Makita. She won Makita. So Lori Tischler, we need your address so we can send your prize. So you let us know your address, and we'll send that to you. And everyone out there, have a fabulous day, and I will too. You take care now.